So I have delved into the dark occult, and it has helped me in ways that recently I have looked back on, and I can see how. You may ask yourself, how can the dark occult help you with anything? Well, if you're asking the question like that, there's probably a good chance that you're stuck in some kind of energy of religious programming. And if you are, of course you would ask that question because you're thinking of a Satan and a hell. You're thinking of it from a more primitive lens of there's this person or creature or entity in this hell realm that's waiting to punish you for sin. And that there's this fictional God in a sky that watches everything we do, per se. He's checking on you at all times, and if you do something he doesn't like, and he, ironically, it's usually referred to as he, that you do something he don't like, then you're going and you don't repent and you don't believe in his son, Jesus, then you're going to go to this place of eternal torment. What a traumatic thing to teach somebody. What a traumatic thing to be brought up with, to think that if you do certain things, if you think certain ways, and you have certain emotions, you have to repent for them, which means you basically need to repress these thoughts and emotions and not process them at all. You just repent for them. They're not your thoughts. They're probably some demons, or they're coming from some hell or somewhere else, because you can't possibly be homosexual. Everybody can only be straight. You can't be homosexual. You can't be gay. There's no chance that you could be a trans man or a trans woman because this entity says so. Or you just may be doing any number of things. You may have had lust, or you may have drank some alcohol, or you may have smoked a cigarette, or you may have just had a certain thought that wasn't the most pure thought. We live in a positive and negative polarity, and none of us are perfect. I don't believe in Jesus. I think he may have been an actual person that could have been a teacher, but at best, his story, if he did exist, has been severely distorted and propagandized back in the days when a group of men wrote the Bible and said the word came from God. But it was written by people, and over the years has been distorted over and over and over again. So, no, I don't believe in Jesus, except that he may have actually been a person that lived. It may have been a teacher like Buddha and other teachers, but his story has been totally hijacked. I don't believe there's some entity up there that's wanting to send you to some hell realm to be tormented because you're not living up to some kind of societal standard, or you're not repenting for some mistake maybe you made, or maybe you did something that was not in your best interest. But repenting for it time and time again doesn't solve anything. What would solve something is if you looked at why you do it. If you sat down with yourself and spent time with yourself and looked internally as to why you might do said action. Why are you participating in whatever thing that might be detrimental to you, instead of repenting and repressing it? Basically, so you can just go back and repeat the behavior again sometime down the road. This is what most people end up doing, and they just always have guilt and shame. Like, I had someone in my comments yesterday say to me they were gay, or they are gay, and that they talked about shame and guilt and that their sin. It's like, no, being gay is who you are. Being attracted to whoever is who you are as a person. It's how you feel inside. It's your soul. It's true to who you are authentically. It's not authentic to repent for said thing and then feel shame and guilt because of other people's projections upon you, because of their own insecurity and their own need to push a program on you that's also was pushed on them. So when you can get out of a program like this and look at life more from the lens of energy, more from positive and negative polarities, then you have a much more open mind as to trying to work with yourself and work on the reasons why you do things that you do. If you're wanting to better yourself in any way, you're wanting to do things to better your life, then it makes more sense to me to be able to sit with yourself and actually feel the emotions and actually feel the feelings that people in religious programs go and repent for and act and try to forget about and try to shut off and try to act like they don't exist. Like people who tell you to, like, shut off depression, just tell yourself positive things, positive affirmations. That don't work. It'll work temporarily. I mean, it will work. I've done it before. Yeah, it'll work for a temporary amount of time, but it's a forced effort to have to constantly, again, it's another way, like repenting and repressing, positive affirmations and repressing. So tell yourself the positive affirmations to repress the actual depression, where really what you should be doing is sitting and trying to delve into yourself as to why you're depressed and feel the feelings and let them rise and be authentic with the feelings that are coming up. This will allow you to be able to get closer to root causes as to why you're feeling the way you're feeling. This is what I do now, and this is what I work on more. And I'm far from perfect, and I still get depressed, and I still have inclinations of self-deletion, but I have become stronger over time, developed more resilience over time to be able to keep working with these things, because you're never going to be perfect regardless, and you're still subject to possibly vice in different things, but it's just a matter of being aware. When you do something that's detrimental to you, at least be aware of it. Don't totally dissociate. At least if you're aware of it, you can look at it later and say, well, was that the best thing for me, or is there something I can do to work on that? So going into the occult, it has helped me in ways, because when you work with occult entities, darker elements, you're working on your shadow. So it's no different than, say, you're delving into elements of, say, New Age spirituality, and you're experimenting with that, and you're getting into working with archangels, and you're working with entities of the light. Well, it's the same thing on the dark occult side. You're working with entities of the dark. You're not looking at it from a lens of demons like in The Exorcist or something like that. You're looking at a light and dark spectrum. So when you're working with, say, archangels or something like that, you're bringing up elements inside of you of light and positive polarity. And that's good, and that bring you into higher vibrations and bring you into higher frequency when you go through all of that. But when you're working with entities on the occult side, you're bringing up the dark elements inside of you. You're bringing them up to the surface. Now, why is that beneficial? It's beneficial because if you've been in any religious programming especially, you've repressed all these darker elements or tried to act like they don't exist out of the fear of hell, of the fear of some eternal torment that don't exist. What I personally believe is we come from a central source that is not this judging entity of sorts or watching everything you're doing. It's just where we're incarnated from. I do find that when I connect to it, it is an extreme high frequency of bliss, of love, and for me, it's very feminine. That could also be more resonant to me because of how feminine I often feel. But maybe that's also maybe why it's easier for me to tap into it the way I do, because I'm so open with my femininity. I tap into it very, very easily with cultivating energy. Ironically, being in this male body and having gender dysphoria, I still practice semen retention, which amplifies my ability, psychic awareness, to be able to easily attach to source. And it can be overwhelming, to be honest with you. It's so much for the human body for our soul to try to absorb through a dense body. It feels amazing to connect to, but it can oftentimes be overwhelming to assimilate. This is what I've been going through lately. So source energy is where we incarnate from. This is my belief system. I'm stating this all again too, because in the last two videos I've had so many people on the Christian side. I don't mind if you comment and want to have conversation, but it's like everyone in that program coming into my videos and wanting to convert me. I'm not converting. I'm not going back into the program. I broke out of it a long time ago. It's not something I would ever go back into. And I have stated before, I think it helps some people as a stepping stone when they're not indoctrinated into it or forced into it or brought up, conditioned into it. And they have people around them putting fear into them to stay in it and keeping them dissociated from themselves. I think it's a good stepping stone when you come to it on your own, looking for answers and looking to learn, and you're wanting to maybe not even just delve into Christianity, but you're wanting to delve into different modes of spirituality so you can learn for yourself what is and what is not. I've been doing this now for almost the last 6 years. It's not like I came to this conclusion overnight. I've had breakdown after breakdown, death cycle after death cycle to come to where I'm now at, which again, like I said, is far from perfection. Gender dysphoria plagues me every day. Depression is still there. It's just that now I have more of an understanding of what I'm working with, and I do my best to try to keep working on it. So yeah, when I first got into the dark occult, it was very much like getting into a religious program of any sort, like Christianity or Buddhism or something like that. I first came to the dark occult in 2020, about 6 months after a horrendous breakup, which brought me to first starting to be aware of myself, of my soul and things like that. And I've spoke of this many times. I may link a video here that talks about that situation in general if you want to watch that. It's a few videos down called, I think I called it the timeline split I went through in 2020. And it was after that breakup that was so hard on me that brought me to awareness, or started to bring me to awareness. And first I went through about 6 months of New Age, But then I relapsed back into a very angry place, and wanted to go back to how I was. I wanted to relapse back into my old paradigm, my old persona of who I had been. And I was very angry, very sad, very depressed, and wanted to unalive just about every day during this period. So I turned to the dark occult, but more into a religious program of it. I would say more specific, Anton LaVey, which I believe is Church of Satan, and I read the Satanic Bible and I started reading his books, but I wasn't really understanding Satanism for what it actually is. And again, if you're really stuck in fear-based religion of what you think Satanism is, and you're just thinking of a devil and hell, I had kind of these thoughts myself when I got into it. I wasn't sure. I just thought, oh, maybe it's just about embracing dark and being a really dark person and being just cynical about life and being angry at life and just screw everybody else and just be selfish about myself. That's kind of where my mindset was because of the level of anger and hurt, really a lot of hurt and pain that was inside of me that needed to surface. At the time, though, I didn't understand this. So I was going into Satanism from a very dark, convoluted, angry, and hurtful place, and using it in a sense of masking, another way to mask myself and try to cover up everything I had just been through. And it was also during COVID, which was very stressful in ways for a lot of people during that time. Well, I started going into it on the heels of that. So what happened? I started drinking a lot. I started not caring about anything a lot. Like I said, I wanted to self-delete. I was talking to people that were not also in a sound mind at all, that were also in very dark places in their lives. And it took me a while to get through that. But when I look back at it, how did it help me? I can look back at it now and see where it let things surface out in a way. It let a lot of darkness unfold that I think a lot of it was still stuffed down. A lot of things had been repressed. A lot of things had not been expressed. And through that period, I was expressing a lot of anger, a lot of hurt, a lot of turmoil through going through that phase, or really my first dive into darker elements like that, into the darker occult. Now, what I've learned since with Satanism is it's a religion too, and there's different practices in it. Now, there are people, yes, there are people that practice it in a very detrimental way, that do black magic. I delved into that too. I was attempting to learn how to do curses and things like that because of my anger. I delved into ritual from a dark place and things like that. So there are people that get into it that are very angry, tormented people that go into a very dark place with it and they never leave that place. So yes, it can go into a very deep, dark well. But the basic religion of something like Satanism, like say what Anton LaVey taught and what the Church of Satan was, and I think you have the Satanic Temple. there's a lot of philosophy in it, actually. There's a lot of things in it that can be taken away from it. There's actually wisdom in it. And a lot of Satanists, I would say most of them are peaceful people, not looking to hurt anybody. That's just their practice. Just like people who practice Christianity believe what they believe. Satanists believe what they believe. I don't belong to that either. I don't belong to any religion, but I'm just explaining that they have their belief system, and what I come to realize is an actual, the religion of Satanism is more about philosophy, I would say, than there's not a belief in a devil and a hell. That's not what they're believing. They're believing in themselves, believing in their own self-power, and they're not believing Satan is an archetype for them. It's a symbol. It's not an actual deity. It's the understanding I came to later with learning more about it. And that gave me a whole nother perspective of how they believe. I don't think all Christianity is bad. I think there's wisdom in a lot of ancient books. There is wisdom in the Bible, but I think a lot of it is also fallacy. I think a lot of it is also built on lies and propaganda. But then there are parts in it that have wisdom. There are certain things in there that you can take from that can apply to your life and help you. But as far as an actual deity watching you and wanting to punish you or reward you to do what it wants, I don't believe in. Or this man that's the son of this deity, I don't believe in that. And I think that's totally been distorted and propagandized, if he even existed, if Jesus even existed. The Old Testament, I could not even fully read. There's so many detestable things in the Old Testament. A lot of people don't even know that. A lot of people do, but a lot of people don't, because if you watch, say, just prosperity preachers, a lot of these preachers will concentrate on one part of the Bible. I think some of their messages can also be positive. I used to watch Joel Osteen, and I could get positive. If you ignored the things he just said about the Bible, his basic messages could be very positive and uplifting. But what I'm saying is a lot of these preachers now, they will, they ignore the Old Testament, because the Old Testament, it's no wonder to me they ignore it, because God was so narcissistic in the Bible. In the Old Testament, if you read a lot of it, it's just absolutely ridiculous to me. They had to perform rituals all the time for him, sacrifice animals for sins they committed, and all this stuff. Women were not treated good. There's a number of things, if you were to read any of it, which a lot of people haven't, I know it was appalling to me. Or you could take things like having the Israelites wander around for 40 years to go to the promised land. And what's in the promised land? These giants had already occupied this land. But God tells them it's their land, and they're going to go in and kill these giants to take this land. I mean, there's so many things. I'm just giving you a few examples, but I'm not going to tell you I read it all, because I didn't, but it was just because I was like, I just can't, this is ridiculous. So in any case, we'll get back to the occult. Recently, I went back into it. And I talked about this in the last video. I'll bring it up again because this helped me even more in ways I wouldn't realize it would help me. Early 2024, I went back into dark occult elements, but not in the same way. I had a new understanding by this point of wanting to work with separate entities like Lucifer and Satan, but not Satan as in a hell realm type thing. It's just not like that. When you're at a religious programming, you're not looking at Lucifer, Satan, Astaroth, Lilith. You're not looking at these entities in the same way. And the only way you're really going to understand this is to really research it more. But if you're in a type of program like Christianity, yeah, I'm sure you're not going to do that. But I'm just saying that's the only way you're going to know for yourself. So what I started doing, because of feeling so much gender dysphoria, it was heightened a lot. I had seen my past life as a woman. I had realized I had probably been involved in the adult industry. I'd been abused, probably since childhood with SA. I had all kinds of trauma from that lifetime. But at the same time, that darkness was coming up in me. And because it was coming up in me, I needed an outlet. I didn't see this at the time, but I can look back on it and see why I was going toward the darker entities at this time, because I was feeling this darkness from that past life come up in me so strong, I needed to express it. So to express it, I started really getting involved with Lilith. And the reason is because Lilith, to me, embodies the dark feminine. Power, strength of the dark feminine, sensuality, lust. That's how I was feeling, and it was coming up in me in such a strong way. I could have repressed it, but what would have happened if I would have repressed it? It was just going to come back up at a later date, and it might have came up in a way that would have been more detrimental for me. The way it came up for me was creating an Instagram, and I talked about in the last video, but if you haven't watched that, I created an account where I could be female. I could embody a trans woman there, even though I really wasn't trans, but I wanted to see how this felt, and called myself Vanessa. And I really dived into this dark element of what I was feeling from the past life. Though I really didn't understand it fully at the time. I can look back and I see it now. But I was doing almost nudes, what I could really probably barely get away with on Instagram at the time, because it's like I was wanting to live what I had lived before. And the reason is because her life was tragic. I think she might have unalived, or something else happened to her that just suddenly ended things, and because she didn't resolve anything and didn't have true authenticity or happiness. Well, my belief is that carries over. Trauma from lifetime to lifetime carries over, that for our soul to evolve has to be resolved. A lot of times it's not resolved. So here I am in this male body in this lifetime with this unresolved trauma from this traumatic lifetime. And now I'm expressing it through Vanessa, and I'm seeing what it's like to be a seductive female. Basically, I'm being a seductive female online, and I'm drawing an audience from that. I actually did draw a pretty decent audience from that, but over time I got depressed with it, because I was having to use a makeup app because I had not done makeup before. I was altering my face a little bit because I wanted to look how I saw myself in the past life. That was frustrating, because while I feel like some feminine traits about me, without hormones, without anything serious to really make me a trans woman, I could see these flaws that I don't feel like I had in the past life because I was a woman and had more of the body and all of that. So I started to get more depressed, even though I was able to express these darker elements, and I got to interact with a lot of people in ways of a seductive way and got to express that. Eventually I became deeply depressed over it all, knowing that it was more of a fantasy because I was having to alter certain pieces to make myself appear in my mind somewhat of how I looked in the past life. So, and I think I was getting depressed too because I was realizing that lifetime, I think I was starting to realize that lifetime is over. And she, or your old self, is trying to take over who you are in this life. I was starting to kind of piece that together a little bit, but it wasn't until I went to therapy around May of last year in 24 and started really getting into therapy for a while, a few months in, that I felt so comfortable with Sabine. I've talked about many times how close I was to her. I was able to tell her about these things, and she was open-minded and would listen. She had a clear, open mind to possibilities of paranormal, the occult, all of these things, which is something else I take issue with. As a side note, I had someone leave a comment to me about they are a Christian therapist. Now, I'm not against you. You practice what you want. What I have issue with is so many Christians coming on my channel with the same type of attitude of trying to preach gospel to me when I clearly state in these last couple of videos my belief system. But this therapist that told me she's a Christian therapist kind of did the same thing in a manipulative manner. If you're a Christian, Christian therapy would be useful for you. But when you're not, and you're not in a religious program of any sort, then you need therapy. If you're going to seek therapy, which I would highly recommend if you're going through any sort of challenge, then you need somebody that is completely open-minded to your situation and supportive and can talk to you through a wide range of things. And that's what I had with Sabine. And I have it with Winnie now too. She seems also, the place I go is generally like this. And I'm very fortunate. But I was able to tell her about Vanessa and what I had done, and we was able to work through it more. I was able to tell her about the past life experience and things like that. I was able to kind of delve into these things more. So eventually I felt like the Vanessa thing ran its course, and I ended up deleting that Instagram after, it was probably 3 or 4 months I was on there and saw that it had run its course. But the dark occult at that time helped me a lot, especially working with Lilith. And I was watching some occult practitioners on kind of how they work with these entities. So working with them brought up the shadow, brought out more of the dark that needed to come, that wanted to express through me from that past life. And I felt like it needed to happen, just like in 2020 when I went first into the dark occult and needed to process a lot of anger and hurt. Same thing can be said for me going back and forth from Christianity to New Age and working with archangels and working with light entities. I was going through stages then of where I was going through stages where I was trying to sometimes go back to repressing my shadow. So I'd go into extremes working with archangels and light entities, trying to repress feeling feminine, trying to repress lustful thoughts, trying to repress all my shadow. So that's what I'm saying. There's one spectrum to the other with this, and it can be very difficult when you break out of religious programming, because you start cycling through different methods, and it can be very complex. You'll one day be working with light entities, trying to explore that side of things, thinking you're going to be just pure and full of light and the dark don't exist. It's kind of like religion. That's why I say New Age is very much like being stuck in a religious program. But then you go to the dark occult, and it can also become kind of religious too, with worshiping these entities. You can almost also fall into the darker spectrum as well. So what happened was, working with both sides, back and forth, doing deep meditations, past life regression, working in nature, going to therapy, talking about all these things as well with somebody I could trust. Eventually, I have now come to an understanding of what I now believe, which is in reincarnation, not a religion, just that we're reincarnated and that we come back here time after time after time. Now, I don't have the answers to it all. I'm not an expert. It's something I'm continually learning, and I share on here as I go with things, as I've done. But I'm far from an expert. I'm far from somebody that has all the answers as to why we're reincarnated over and over, or as to how many times that can happen, or as to exactly what happens. What I believe happens now is that when we go back to source energy, I believe that we have a life review, and I believe that we go over things as our soul, I'm thinking, wants to evolve in each lifetime, wants to learn new experiences, hence why our memory is wiped when we incarnate into a new lifetime, because it would be useless for us to remember everything from a previous life if our soul wants to have a new life experience. I'm actually starting to understand now why I've racked my brain. Why am I a man in this life? Because it's hurtful when I think, why couldn't I just been born a woman again? Because I feel it so much. The reason why I'm starting to understand is that my soul knew this trauma was there from the past life. If I had been born a woman again, for example, if I had been born a woman into this exact circumstance today, my life would probably be a lot different. I came up around some shady characters when I was a kid at times. Dysfunctional home. If I had been a girl, I think there'd been a very big chance I would have went through SA again as a child, because of my upbringing and who I was around as a kid. If I'd have been a girl, I think that could have easily happened. My teenage years would have been a lot different. A lot of things would have been altered. I may not have ever come to a point of awareness. I may have compounded onto the traumas I already had in the past life. It makes sense to me, and I'm thinking my soul's like, let's try this as a male. Yes, you're going to still go through traumas. Yes, you'll still go through some things in this lifetime, but there'll be a point arranged to where maybe you can come to awareness. And this is what I'm starting to put pieces together on. So that's where I'm at now. Does it mean that the gender dysphoria has gone away? No, I mean, it's very frustrating to me. Does it mean I won't transition? No, it doesn't, because I get up on some days and I feel so feminine, and I try to live with it day to day. So like sometimes, 2 videos ago I wore makeup. Now you ask yourself, why don't you just try to be feminine all the time? Well, it's because I'm trying to integrate it and everything I'm telling you, and having an understanding of my past life, and having an understanding of why I may have came here as a male. And I'm trying to figure out whether my soul wants to integrate it, or am I supposed to transition and work with it from a trans female perspective, an older life. I'm still trying to figure this out. I don't wear makeup out everywhere or worry so much about shaving as obsessively as I was, because it causes more depression for me, or it'll cause more resistance for me. I know I'm not a passing female, so I just try to, right now as I'm working through this, try to be authentic with my masculine and feminine traits as much as I can, and try to cultivate my energy as much as I can, and keep working on myself as I go. It's a day-to-day process, and it's taken me a long time to get to this point. So I hope for any of you who have been watching my videos, you have a bit of a more understanding of what I've been through. Of course, you can watch other videos if this interests you, and you can see a progression. You can see my ups and downs literally through my videos. I mean, if you go back to the first video, and you can see a lot of what I've been through, and a lot of what this is like. Gender dysphoria, working with the metaphysical and dealing with gender dysphoria, that sort of thing. And for anyone wanting to comment, trying to convert me, you're wasting your time. And I'm not being mean to you or anything, but it's just, I think that at some point you cross a boundary with me when you keep on with something. And you're not watching a video, obviously, because you're not even talking about, I obviously state my belief systems in these videos I'm doing. And yes, I give strong opinions against what I don't believe in, but I'm not going to go over on a Christian person's channel and try to convince them, knowing what they actually believe and knowing they're locked into that. I'm not going to go over onto Christian people's channels and try to tell them they're wrong and everything they believe is a lie. I'm not going to go on their channels doing that. But on my own channel, I am going to state my own beliefs. So with that being said, that's all I have for now, guys. And I hope everyone's doing well. I'll talk to y'all later on. Bye.